Thank you for staying with us, everyone. President Bola Tinubu has reaffirmed his administration's commitment to defeating terrorism and strengthening diplomatic ties with Nigeria's global partners. The president says the task ahead is to move forward with clarity of purpose, guided by the renewed hope agenda to build a prosperous Nigeria. His remarks comes days after U.S. President Donald Trump designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern, a move the federal government has described as a misrepresentation of the nation's security situation. In his first public comments on the matter, the president said his government is engaging the international community to advance security, stability, and economic growth. Tonight, let's speak with Dr. Kabir Adamu, CEO, Beacon Consulting Limited. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Adamu. Good to see you again, sir.
Same here. My pleasure. It's been a while.
All right. So I would like to, have your assessment of the president's far-reaching measures to combat terrorism in light of the U.S. tagging Nigeria as a country of particular concern. Does this international designation undermine or validate the president's counterterrorism agenda?
I think it undermines his counterterrorism agenda. The United States is an ally, apart from a very strong diplomatic relationship that exists between Nigeria and the United States, that works at different levels. At the level of us having diplomatic representation, even though we don't have an ambassador at the moment, but we do have an embassy there. We've got staff of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, including HIJ. They also have an embassy here, one of the biggest in Africa, actually. They are building one of the biggest embassies in Africa at the moment, in Lagos. Then there's a binational commission that exists, which is very active. I think it meets annually. And I also am aware that there is several defense agreements between Nigeria and the United States that allows the U.S. military to train Nigerian defense forces in different aspects. And then more importantly, there's an intelligence liaison between the United States and Nigeria. So all of these are aspects of the strong diplomatic relationship between the two countries. And then for one side to come out and make such a designation without consulting the other side, and then even proceed to issue military threats, I think it's an escalation of diplomatic part that does not really follow sequence. Normally, so there are procedures for handling out such issues, perhaps through
what are the procedures, Dr. Adamu?
I was about to go there. They could easily have, for instance, written formally through their embassy to Nigeria to say this is what we've observed and this is what we would like to see. And then, of course, Nigeria would respond. I don't think any of that happened. I do know that the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom has visited Nigeria severally. I also know that several congressmen have visited Nigeria. I also know that the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom wrote its report on Nigeria in July. And it was in that report that it actually, again, just like it did in previous years, recommended for the categorization of Nigeria under this country of particular concern category that eventually President Trump picked up on and worked upon. So the procedures would have been that. And then they would have probably given time. If we don't respond, then they can now probably escalate. Even then, I mean, the level of escalation between partners is unprecedented. We're talking of partners, countries that have related for such a very long time and for which a very strong diplomatic relationship exists. So it's honestly, it's unprecedented and it does not follow the norms, diplomatic norms. Although we must admit that President Trump is someone who, since he came, has not really complied with diplomatic norms. The rules-based order that the world is used to after the Second World War, that the world established and embraced, he has not necessarily followed that rule-based order. The kind of tariffs he has imposed in countries, attacking Venezuela, what he did to South Africa and now to Nigeria, these are all outside the precepts of normal diplomatic practices. Although in international relations, there's a theory called the madman theory. This appears to be, an exemplification of that madman's theory in international relations.
But then, the president has spoken for the first time, and I'm wondering, just like many Nigerians, how realistic is this pledge, is the president's pledge that Nigeria will defeat terrorism, given the current security landscape? On the other hand, just as you analyze this, what specific indicators would show that Nigeria is actually winning this fight against terrorism?
So unfortunately, and with all sense of responsibility, the indicators are not looking very good at the moment. We just published our October report at Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, the company that I head. And unfortunately, as at the end of October, more than 9,000 Nigerians have died from January to December. Sorry, to the end of October. The good news is that we're seeing the numbers beginning to drop, and consistently, actually, which makes me extremely happy, because in the past, we would rarely see a consistent decline over 4 months. Now we're seeing that. I'll quickly explain what I mean. We started the year with the numbers at about 1,000, and then it peaked by April at about 1,300. And then since then, it's been dropping. It dropped at October, when we tabulated, it was 6,400, thereabout. So if you compare it to the 1,300 that we recorded in April, it's almost a 50% reduction. So clearly, the military is doing something, or rather the security forces, all of them, the national security enterprise, there's something they're doing that is positive, and that's why those numbers are dropping. And I think we need to take note of that. We need to commend the president. But because he's the president, he also needs to look at this bigger picture that says 9,000 people are dying within 10 months. It's worrisome. That places Nigeria within the five countries with the highest security challenges in the world. And so we need to take note of that and bring that number down significantly. And of course, in the course of the conversation, we can talk about how we need to do that. You asked what the metrics.
Let me ask now, because the accolades are there and the fears and concerns are also there. So let's stick with the fears and concerns. Based on your experience, Dr. Adamu, what kind of strategy should the president adopt to achieve this goal? Are there existing counterterrorism strategies in Nigeria at the moment that need reform, or should a new framework be developed entirely? Where do you stand?
I'm not an advocate of a new framework. We have enough instruments. My only worry is that we're not implementing those instruments. Starting at the highest level, we've got the security councils. And it worries me that the National Security Council is not meeting. Even this development with regards to the United States is enough to warrant for the National Security Council to sit, but we haven't seen it sitting. So let's start with that. Let's start implementing the provisions of the Constitution as they have to do with national security. I have mentioned the National Security Council. It's not been sitting for some odd reason. I don't think it's sat more than once this year, and we're already in October. Number two is we have instruments for dealing with our security challenges. We have the National Counterterrorism Strategy. We have the Policy Framework on Countering Violent Extremism. We have the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act as amended in 2022. Those are the high-level instruments. Now, we're not implementing them as we should be implementing them. The two that I mentioned earlier on, that's the National Counterterrorism Strategy, as well as the Policy Framework on Policy Framework on Countering Violent Extremism. They've been in existence for more than 7 years. We're just about to review them. I know the validation process has been done, and I'm hoping that very soon the president will launch them. But I would appeal to Mr. President that before he launches them, he should get the buy-in of the governors. I know security is still a federal issue, but the governors are playing a huge role. The reason why you are able to, sleep with your two eyes closed in Lagos is because the Lagos state governor has done a lot in enhancing security with the support of the federal agencies. So again, I'm hoping Mr. President will call in the governors, expose the documents to them, allow their input so that by the time the documents are launched, they would see it as part of their own. Of course, the legislature too is very important in this regard. So I'm hoping the buy-in of the legislature had been obtained in the course of the development of those two documents. The last instrument I would like to mention is the National Security Strategy, what we call the NSS. The National Security Strategy gives the roadmap on how to address security. It's also due for review, and I'm hoping that the process would involve, it should be a bottom-top approach where the owner of that document, which is the Office of the National Security Advisor, seeks the opinion of the generality of Nigerians and then amends the current one. I'm also hoping that an evaluation will be conducted to find out why wasn't the previous one implemented. And I say this with all sense of responsibility. It wasn't fully implemented. The easiest way you can understand that it wasn't implemented, if you put, let's say, 20, 30 people in a room and ask them how many of them are aware that we have a national security strategy, including security practitioners, very few of them will tell you that they're aware that we have such a document. And the strategy is supposed to be a roadmap upon which every other thing is developed. The final point I will make is our intelligence estimates. For some reasons, over time, Jumoke, we haven't been developing our estimates in the manner that we should be developing them. Now, the estimates are what guides the collection of intelligence. If we are not developing estimates, then unfortunately, our collection is going to be in the manner that it is. Last point, sorry, it's also the issue of what we call counter-espionage. Counter-espionage is that element of intelligence which prevents confidential documents from going into the wrong hands. I'm very worried at where we are. You just need to go online and you see confidential documents, sometimes with even the minutes of 7 heads of security departments on them. You see them posted online, and yet nothing happens to the organization or to the individual who posted those documents. So these are some of the things that I think Mr. President should do. All of what I've mentioned can be subsumed under 2 things: security sector governance and security sector reform.
And I'm wondering how we've made progress with all of these lapses you just identified. But quickly, Dr. Adamu, the president made this promise while engaging the U.S. What kind of support? Now, I have 2 questions. What kind of support, either intelligence, technology, or training, should Nigeria be seeking from the U.S.? And for those who are strongly convinced that maybe it's because we ask for too much, I mean, that's why the U.S. would decide to invade a sovereign nation, how can Nigeria ensure that such partnerships are mutually beneficial and not one-sided?
We need to strengthen our institutions. If we don't strengthen our institutions, then we're exposing ourselves, and we would allow whatever partner we bring in to dictate to us. Our institutions, we've got, lest the listener forgets, we have in the minimum 29 organizations, ministries, departments, and agencies that are directly, primarily involved in security. Then we have another 12 or 13 that are associated and supporting this 29. So on the whole, we have about 42 organizations that should be helping us achieve effective security. Unfortunately, they are not as effective as they should be, and that's why we have more than 9,000 deaths in the country at the moment. So number one, I would say, if we're bringing in a partner like the US, is to support us in security sector governance. How do we improve on security sector governance in such a way that this 42 or 43 that I've mentioned will work together as one to achieve the provisions of Section 14, subsection 2 of our Constitution? That's what security sector governance will do. Then the second element is security sector reform, to democratize our security sector, to make it accountable to you and I in such a way that the about 300,000 plus police officers that we have, 50% of them are not protecting VIPs. They are actually working for you and I. So these are, for me, the 2 major areas. Of course, under that would come issues like training. It would come issues like equipment purchase, transfer of technology, and also support in terms of strategic force multipliers, communication, intelligence, name them, all the force multipliers.
All right, let's have this conversation, Dr. Adamo, because there are new service chiefs. And I mean, whether we like to agree, interagency rivalry has been cited as a challenge. I mean, the other day, retired group captain Sadiq Garbashir was telling me that during the regime of the past service chiefs, or regime or administration of the past service chiefs, there was a bit of an improvement in synergy. It says before then, it was so terrible. But now that we have new service chiefs, how can this administration improve coordination among security agencies?
So some of the hindrances to coordination are structural. Others are institutional. Others are behavioral. The structural one would require the National Assembly to make some adjustment. And I would give you a very simple example. Policing as a function, not policing now as an organization. Policing as a function is divided into so many organizations in Nigeria. Now, some of these organizations are within the Ministry of Police Affairs, while others are within the Ministry of Interior. So coordination becomes very difficult because of that structural difference. And there is really no much handshake between the Ministry of Police Affairs and Ministry of Interior. So that's an example of the structural challenges that I mean. In terms of institutional challenges, there are issues around interoperability that makes it difficult for some organizations to work together because of maybe the equipment they have, because of the mindset, the types of training they receive. All those are institutional issues that can be changed at the level of the head of that organization. But then the other more behavioral ones are a legacy of our military era, where the military sees itself as more superior to the police sees itself as more superior to the NSC, CDC, and the immigration and the others. So for that reason, they find it difficult really to respect them and work together with them. Now, all of this can be corrected. And like you rightly indicated, the immediate past service chiefs did a stellar job. If you pick all of them, all three of them, have seen their objectives. And in their objectives, you see interoperability mentioned there. So my call to these new service chiefs is to maintain and build upon what this immediate past ones did as far as interoperability is concerned. And then, of course, the other element that I like, the structural one, that would be the National Assembly. But of course, the executive, the Mr. President, can nudge the National Assembly to look at certain components of those structural difficulties that make synergy. The three C's, actually, time will not allow me to go into the three C's, but I'll just quickly mention them. What we call coordination, cooperation, and collaboration. We need to look at the entire 42 organizations within the national security enterprise, and then make sure that we introduce elements where there are walls that have been built, structural walls that are preventing the three C's, we break them down. And then where there are institutional challenges, we also break them down and change them. And where it's behavioral, we encourage through training. And I must say the military and some of the other organizations are doing very well. Today, if you go to Jaji as an example, you would see that the military is training almost all of these 29 organizations that I've mentioned at different points. They train together. So that supports and helps the three C's. If they train together, they know each other. If you go to the SSS school in Buari, here in Abuja, you see them training almost all the organizations. So these are the kind of things that would help improve the three C's.
All right, Dr. Adamu. So this is my curiosity at play. Whether a structural or institutional, would a centralized counterterrorism command structure help, or would it create new bureaucratic challenges?
So we actually have a central counterterrorism, command under one of the instruments I mentioned, which is the National Counterterrorism Strategy. It mandated the creation of a National Counterterrorism Center, and it also mandated the appointment of a coordinator counterterrorism in the person of General Laka today. Before him, there was, I think, a couple of persons who held that position before him. So we do have a coordination center for counterterrorism. Unfortunately, however, some of the structural, institutional, and behavioral gaps and challenges that have prevented coordination is also affecting that center. But I must say the center is doing an amazing job. I have been fortunate to be involved in some of what it's doing. It's doing an amazing job. It's work in progress, and I'm hoping that we will strengthen that center to allow for coordination coordination. The good thing is that it's a military person that is heading that center. And so hopefully it would reduce some of the tension that would arise if it was a non-military person.
All right, then. CEO Beacon Consulting Limited, Dr. Kabir Adamu, thank you so much for speaking with us on Politics Tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you very much for watching, everyone. That's a package tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at 12:30 a.m. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News NG. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Good night, everyone. I'll see you again tomorrow.